My kids and I often play, well, we often play Super Mario Maker. This is Mario Maker 2. But we play a version of it where when we're trying to make levels and we have trouble figuring out what kind of level we want to make, we do a thing where it's like Iron Chef. We had been watching Iron Chef when we started this. And, there's a main theme ingredient. And so someone suggests a theme ingredient, and you base the whole level around it, and then your level has a main theme. And so, like this one, for example, was a castle level that I made that happens to be a seesaw level. And, it's not entirely seesaws, but you can see that there's seesaws all over the place. And this whole level is based around seesaws and different ways you can use seesaws. And then sometimes we add to this too. Sometimes we have more than one theme ingredient. This one's pretty much based around seesaws. We have other ones, you make a level around just the claw mechanic. You make a level just around a certain kind of enemy. And you end up with a themed level that doesn't feel like you stuck a bunch of random crap together. And so we tend to play like that pretty often. Oh. Too bad. So I came up with an idea for a .NET application that would facilitate Mario Maker Iron Chef. And you can see I've got kind of a visual plan here that's probably similar to what you would have done in Prog 1205. If you've been in my first class, and maybe my second class, because I don't know when I'm getting this video out, you might have noticed I haven't really emphasized planning. And maybe I've talked about it, maybe I haven't. But I haven't really emphasized planning the way we did in Prog 1205. And that's because we do say, I say to my students in Prog 1205, it's not that you're always going to have one of these planning documents. But you do it for a while until you start to develop that mental framework, that way of thinking that's going to help you approach these problems. So I do need to think about what I'm going to do to design my form. In Mario Maker, you can pick different kinds of Mario games to copy. And so I usually pick Mario 3. But maybe you want to pick from any of the different styles. Right now there's 5 styles. That's unlikely to change, I guess. And then there's course styles too. And so like you saw me playing a castle. But it could be like a grassland or a forest or a cave. And so there's different course styles. Because there's nighttime versions of each of them, there's effectively 20 of those course styles. And then there's parts. And parts, there's over 100 parts that are the different elements you can add into a Mario Maker level that makes it a Mario level. Some of them are dependent on the style. And so I kind of thought this would name a main part, a second part, and so it'll come up with 2 random parts and give you 2 different options. And then a band part. And I sometimes tell my kids, because I got 3 kids, need to involve them all. I say, well, what's the Iron Chef main ingredient? What's the second ingredient? And then I can make kind of a level where 2 things play together. And then I get the third one to band something. And maybe they're going to use something that, really changes the way you make a level, like the ground itself. Or power-up mushrooms. You kind of need power-up mushrooms to go for most of the bigger power-ups. So those can sometimes be important. And I thought for buttons, it would just be similar to what we had before, where there's kind of like one main button that does the main action of the program. So we've had programs that have calculated things and a reset and an exit. And I thought I would design this and then maybe talk a bit about the programming without going too deep yet, because we're early. So I'll be coming back to this plan. I've got pseudocode for the whole thing. The actual calculation, though, that's going to be complicated. And in fact, it's something that we're going to work on the tools for throughout the entire course. Arrays are going to make it easier, which is a week 3 topic. Functions are going to make it easier, which is like week 4 or 5. Object-oriented programming is going to be a nice touch, which is a week 7 thing. And so we might add to this through the semester, but for now, let's just design it. And I've already done a little demo in front of you in week 1, and we'll work more on that in week 2. But let's make it. And so I'm going to call this, what should I call it? I called it over here Mario Maker Iron Chef. It should be called like Iron Mario or something like that. But I do want to make sure I do proper Pascal casing here, because as I've told you before, renaming things can suck. And .NET has in the past gotten temperamental about including spaces. So I'm going to make sure I don't include any spaces. So Iron Mario Chef? That sounds good. Iron Mario Chef. It's a C# program using .NET 5. It's a Windows Forms application. It's not WPF. We had some people getting maybe a little bit arguably confused and going with WPF in week 1, and we don't want to do that. I don't need to belabor making this form. I mean, it's pretty simplistic. It happens to be showing the plan right now. Oh, there we go. So we're gonna have kind of like a label, text box, 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 3 buttons. It's a lot of controls, actually, but nothing too complicated, nothing too new. And I'll drag them in, and then I'll set the properties and the names, which is important. And then I'll set up a couple event handlers. And getting it working perfectly with the tools we have right now will actually be kind of complicated, but we'll do our best. We'll get it maybe kind of working, and we'll see how it could inform a Mario level. And I'll have kids walking in periodically.
No, I just want to see what. It sounded like you were saying Mario, so
I was saying Mario, fan.
well, instead you were screaming Mario.
No, I'm not streaming anything because computers. Okay. So I'd said label, text box. It's going to be kind of like almost a table-like layout, but it's in fact not a table. I'll just drag them in and I'll configure them all after. You know what else you could do, depending on your laziness, and I do like to make, I like to be lazy, I don't know, is you could make one perfectly configured label and text box, and then um, and then copy and paste that label and text box. But I'll just not do that. And 3 buttons, as we discussed. And I don't need it to be a big application, and so I might just shrink it to about the size I need, kind of like that ish. And let's see what I can do with these. I want to maybe I can go to format, and I can go to center in form horizontally, and now I got 3 centered buttons, which is kind of cool. Now these labels and text boxes, they're gonna change size a little bit. You can see I'm multi-selecting things to change the properties more quickly. I'm glossing over some of this. We'll talk about it in class, what we haven't already. You'll see me doing it. And I won't remember always what I've talked about or haven't. So, I hope you're going to ask questions. You can't ask questions right now because this is pre-recorded. But sometime you'll be able to. On these 5 labels, I think I want them all to be the same size. And I want them to be like aligned to the right the same way. And I think that's going to be easier if I set the auto size property to false. And you're going to see when I do that, I'm going to start to be able to set the size of these labels separately. What's my biggest label on this form? It says primary theme part right here. There's a reason I chose the language I did, which I won't get into. So I'm going to change the text to this label. I'm going to make it say primary theme part. And then I'll stretch it out. And I'll make it so I can see all the text. And if I look at the size of it, it says 145 by 25. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that size for all 5 labels. Perfect. My text alignment, I'm going to change to, you can see this funny grid thing pop up. It starts at top left, but you can go like middle left. And in this case, I'm going to go middle right. And that way they'll all be kind of toward the right-hand side of the screen. You saw me looking at these alignment-related options. I don't know, maybe right now it doesn't want to let me do that. You can go here, you can go align rights. And now I've got a whole bunch of right-aligned labels. Labels being very boring form components. I mean, you don't really do much of anything with labels. These text boxes, do I need these to be bigger? Maybe they should be like, maybe I'll make them 145. We'll do kind of a symmetry thing. A little bigger, because some of the part names might end up being a bit big. I don't want the user to be able to enter information into any of these text boxes. So what you can do is you can set its enabled status to false. There's also an option I think called read only for some controls, but yeah, I'll just set it to disabled equals false, and that means the user can't change things in there. And then a couple more things to do. I'm going to align all this stuff. Oh my, where's my, here we are. Align center and form, just for being pretty, basically. I'm going to take these two, and you know what I'm going to do with these? I'm going to align their middle, and I'll align the middle of the label and text box right at the top so that they're just very nicely spaced. And then right here, I'm going to pick format, vertical spacing, make equal. And right here, you don't have to do this. This is me being nitpicky. I'm never going to be like, oh, you lose marks because your label was off by a couple pixels. No, that would be stupid. And hopefully Clint doesn't do that either, but maybe I'll talk to him about that. There we go. You know, the spacing on this is starting to take shape. Like this looks like an application that can actually solve this amazing problem. We have to name things and we have to set some text. What are we going to name things? Well, let's see. Let's start at the bottom. We want to set the text. This button is going to say exit. We talked a little bit about hotkeys in week 1, very quickly, right at the end. And so hotkeys is an access key. It's something where you press Alt and a key and it activates it. And it's really easy to do. You don't have to write a bunch of code. You just use this ampersand character. This is a weird exclusive feature for Windows Forms. But if I put E ampersand XIT, then what that means is anywhere in my application, if I hit Alt X, it exits. It's a one keystroke way of executing a certain piece of functionality, and that's useful. I'm going to call this button exit, again adhering to my camel casing rules from my style guide. This one's going to be button reset. I think I chose the word reset as its name, and so I'm going to make it say reset. And I think I'll put the hotkey on R. And then this button is going to be the main button is randomize. I thought maybe it'd be kind of funny to put it on Z, just because not often you use the letter Z. I don't know. You can disagree with me if you want. Button randomize. There's my 3 buttons done. I think I'll set the text of my labels so that I can remember how to name things here. So I was going to call this bottom one band part. I'll put a colon on the end just so it looks right. Second theme part. This label here, label 2, is going to be course style. And label 1 is going to be game style. Okay, still have to name things, but this is going to just help me do that without flipping back and forth between my plan. I also completely ignored at least one accessibility feature as I did that. Kudos to you if you noticed. All right, so I don't need to set text for my text boxes, as strange as that sounds. I don't need to set that because this is where the randomized values are going to pop up. So we don't want to do that. So I'm just going to call this text box band part, because what else would I call it? This will be text box secondary part. This will be text box primary part. And then, after this, I don't think I'll need to really set anything in these text boxes. Text box course style. Probably some people are going to say, like, those are long names. Why would you call it that? And I just feel like I have the space on my computer to name it whatever I want, I promise. My computer might suck a little bit, as we can tell by my being unable to stream. But it definitely has enough room to write out long names, and I may as well be clear in my naming. It's going to make my coding easier, and it's going to make understanding this for other coders easier. We write code for people who aren't in our head. We write code to be understood. We don't write it for the computer. We write it for the people. Okay, so this label, I guess I'll just go with label band part. I'll use pretty much the same names, but starting with label. Label secondary part. There was a reason I chose that name. Maybe I'll change it, though. Label primary part. Label course style. Label game style. Okay. And there's a fun thing here, by the way. Anytime you're in this design view, right at the top of your properties window, there's this little drop-down, friend. And it lists everything that exists on your form, including the form itself. And so my form here, I haven't set its properties. That's important. We looked at some of those in week 1. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to change this from form 1 to... 1 to 1. 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 1 to Iron Mario Chef? Sure. I should probably rename that file too. Our style guide says that file names should be Pascal cased. So I'll just call this Iron Mario Chef too. And, you know, naming that form does in fact matter, especially later on when we're making a multi-form application. We want to make sure we've got a good name for that. I want the start position to be center screen. I want the text to be Iron Mario Chef, I guess is what I've settled on. Minimize and maximize. No, I think those would look stupid. So let's turn the minimize and maximize boxes off. What else could I do? I could set some size constraints, but I'm not going to worry about that. Maybe I'll make it so that the cancel button is button reset, and that means whenever I hit the escape key, it resets the state of the form. And I'll make the accept button randomize, because that's the main action of the entire application. That's what I want to happen. So this is in a pretty good state. I have keyboard access all around. I have good contrast. I haven't watched my tab order, but I can tell you that I fully expect my tab indexes to just work out because of the order I dragged controls in. And you know, a lot of that comes down to planning, but you can manually set the tab index for every control. So what I'm expecting to see as I go through this is kind of like that Western style reading order I talked about in week 1. So my top left one is 0, and then right of it is 1. And then the next one down is 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7. Yeah, this is all what I want. No surprises here, and that's great. I did say I have all keyboard access. One thing I haven't actually allowed perfect keyboard access for is getting into each text box with a single keystroke, which, you know, some people are going to think, why on earth would you want to do that? But I think kind of sort of like, why wouldn't I? If I can enable that feature for the one person who really wants it, I should do that. So I'm going to put an ampersand on my G here, right on the label. And the strange thing that does is labels can't actually accept the tab focus. Labels don't do anything. They just show information. So when I hit Alt-G, what happens is the Windows form, it tries to select that label, but it can't. So it goes to the next thing in tab index. So as long as I've set a perfect tab index order, as long as my tab order is completely sensible, including my labels, then I can put hotkeys on my labels, and that allows access to basically anything on the form. And so I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to have Alt-C for accessing the course style text box. My primary theme part, well, I guess I'll do P, because why not? My second theme part, I don't know, I can put it on the 2. You push Alt-2 and you end up there. And my band part, Alt-B. Sure. My only other accessibility feature, and it's a weird one, is the tooltips. And you have to, the way you do this is weird. I don't know what to tell you about this other than this is strange how this works. So to set the tooltip for a Windows form, you have to drag the tooltip onto the form as if you were adding it. And it even looks like you're adding it onto the form, but it doesn't stay on the form. It goes down here in this thing that's called the component tray. And, you know, it's got a name. I often just call it tooltip, which I guess is okay. And then what that does, what having that tooltip does, is it adds a tooltip related property to every control that's already on the form. So if I want a tooltip for every one of my text boxes to describe to the user what that feature is, and there's reasons that's important, right? This is all the information that someone who can't use their sense of sight with their application, this is all the information they get. So this is displays the selected game style. And you know what? Almost everything here is going to be the same, so I'm just going to do a minor copy paste to save myself a little work. Course style displays the selected primary theme part, displays the selected secondary theme part, displays the selected band part. There we go. All right. And then, we need it on the buttons too. Click to randomize the selections above. Click to reset the form to its default state. And the exit button will be click to exit the application. Pretty straightforward stuff. Setting the tooltip is not straightforward because you want to use that property to set the tooltip. There are other ways to do it. You could do it in an event handler, but I don't know why you would make it so complicated for yourself. So you grab that tooltip from the toolbox, drag it onto the form, just like I did, and then you go to each control the user interacts with, and you write in a little descriptive tooltip about what that does. It's not meant to be redundant. It's meant to be helpful. And do think of it as this is all the information the user has about what this control does. Picture them without knowing anything about what your application does. Picture them not knowing anything about Mario Maker, maybe. Anyway, this is a finished form. This is a pretty good level of polish. In fact, this might be a good way to end this video. And then in the next one, we'll make some event handlers. So this is a finished form for Iron Mario Chef.